Something came from Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore.
Welcome to Something Came from Baltimore. My name is Tom Gowker, and I will be your host today. Rachel Eckroth is a musician who's just basically worked with all the best artists. St. Vincent, Chris Botti, and Rufus Wainwright are just some of the artists. Rachel's latest recording is called The Garden. The Garden was released in September 3, 2021 on the Rainy Day record label. The Garden is music fusion. And what does that mean? Let's listen to a segment of a song on the album. It's called Low Hanging Fruit. Flip it to 5 people who love music just as much as you do, because we want you all to be a part of that Be More Music scene. Welcome to Something Came from Baltimore. I love your album. This is a multi-play album, but I found out that it is 10 times better with headsets on because you have so much stuff going on below the surface that I'm missing.
Yes, I'm so glad you realized that.
Yeah.
I should put a note on the front of the album.
Yeah, no, it's not for a casual listener. There's so much stuff going on.
Yeah, we had a really great engineer that did like a bunch of afterthoughts, kind of creative, like panning and effects and all kinds of craziness. So yeah, there's a lot of fun things to hear, and it's definitely like you have to listen to the record more than once to catch it all. So
we're chit-chatting, and I don't even know if I said this, but Rachel Eckroth, welcome to Something Came from Baltimore.
Thank you.
Your album is called The Garden. It came out September 3rd, 2021. It's on the Rainy Day Records, which is different than your previous. Is this a new label for you?
Yeah, it's actually like the first actual label. So the first label that's not just me pretending to be a label. So everything I've done has been self-produced or self-released.
Now, okay, so The Garden, to me, when I first heard the title and I saw the artwork, I thought, oh, this is going to be like spiritually uplifting and positive, motivating kind of music, which I thought was very cool that it was opposite, because then not to say it's not uplifting, but I'm just saying, yeah, it's definitely it's a different kind of bear. And I was like, wow, this is not the Garden that I was expecting. So what does the title mean, and how's it all connected?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely a garden filled with a lot of, creepy things as well as beautiful things. But it's really like, every song is a little bit different from the other, and it really pulls from like a lot of my influences as a keyboardist. So, everything's in the jazz realm, but I'm pulling a lot of different from a lot of sonic places, from rock or free jazz or just jazz or, whatever ambient kind of sounds. So to me, it was just kind of like, if you break it all the way down, it's like I planted a lot of seeds all over the place in music, not just in one type of music. So all of these things are coming, to fruition, and, they grew a really crazy garden, so to speak. So
it's interesting that maybe there's a correlation between the COVID time period and the music itself, because I mean, we were in a really weird space that we didn't know what was going to happen. If we were going to all die, and we were afraid of people, and the news was bleak, and without any kind of shot, this could have continued into a terrible experience for years, and it's still going on. So the garden you could have done a Bon Jovi feel good song, like let's lift our voices and sing kind of vibe. And you went a little in a different place while you had that time. Did you feel that kind of anxiety when you were making the album?
That anxiety was probably, very present in my life, but just musically, I wasn't really thinking in that, I wasn't thinking about those things. I was just kind of, maybe in a way, because it was sort of like, okay, so Tim is my husband. He's the bassist and producer of the record, Tim LaFave. We were just like, let's just do what we like and what we want and see what happens, So it was never, I guess we didn't have to think more than, further than a year and a half or whatever, we didn't have to think about the future because we didn't know if there was a future. So I guess, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So it was just kind of like, let's just do whatever we like, let's make it crazy. Let's make it dark. Let's make it interesting to listen to. We don't have to fit into, whatever category, because, what is a category anymore anyway?
I find this a challenging album, but also a rewarding album. So I want people to explore it just like I did.
Thank you. That's a high compliment. I wanted it to be like that.
Yeah.
So.
And I thank you so much for that. Thank you guys for coming. I want to give a big round of applause to by far the best band on television, day or night, Everett Bradley and the MVP. Back on our last show. It's a little bit of a bittersweet day for me. When I thought about
I'm going off the wall a little for you. So
okay.
You worked with cool people like Rufus Wainwright, Chris Botti, St. Vincent, and I was interested in your experience with the Meredith Vieira talk show. Because I look at it as you must have thought as a young artist that you hit the jackpot. Like, where you're at, what you're doing every day. You got a constant gig. And I think, looking back at the Roots when they took over the Tonight Show, like they're very grateful. They know where their gig is and they figured out how to make it work for them. But for you, this show was only on for a short period of time. So as a young artist, what was your reflection? Were you like, oh, wow, I'm so glad I got a constant paycheck? Or were you like, oh, now I feel I'm boxed in? Or what was your thoughts?
It was more of the first part because I was, but I had moved back to New York for the second time. So I was, I think I was about 34 when I moved back. So that's when I got that Meredith Vieira gig. And, it was great because I moved back to New York. Nothing was really happening. I put out a record called Let Go. I, self-financed. I was getting in the hole with my debt and everything. So, and I was actually about to move out to the West Coast at that point when I auditioned because I was like, this is just hard. It's still hard the second time I'm coming back. And so when I got that gig, I was like, yes, I can pay all my bills. I can live comfortably in New York finally. And on top of that, it helped me be able to do shows around town and pay my musicians and work on the next album and, do all of these creative things that I had a hard time financing before. New York's not an easy place. So.
No, it is not. So this show never really took off. While you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I got a gig. I finally feel like I'm consistent with money. And then you're like, every day you're on like, is this going to get canceled? Is this going to get does that ever?
We were living large for about a year, like the band, as employed people. And then it started we started seeing the signs of things going downtown. So we were all just kind of like, okay, everybody's sort of like, everybody's making future plans, probably a year into it. Cause we're like, oh, we see the writing on the wall. So save your money and think, figure out what's next. But I think overall I'm not going to speak for everyone in the band, but I think it was a really great and fun experience for all of us, and everybody's moved on to do, cool original projects. And it was just one of those things, was like, yay, the timing was perfect. Nothing lasts forever. So let's, enjoy it while it's there.
Yeah. So you moved to Arizona with Tim, and that's where you're at right now?
Well, actually, I moved to LA. So, and Tim was out there already. So I kind of just met up with him, and we ended up getting married. And we recently moved to Tucson right when COVID started. It was just kind of like, hey, let's go somewhere cheaper. So, we did that. And then found a really cool spot where we can be super creative and loud and make a lot of music.
Do you feel like you're in a space now where that money's not as pressing, or are you still a working artist that you're still, trying to do the hustle?
It's not like it was in my 20s, so it's good. Like everything, I figured out how to manage and how to get through paying bills and stuff like that. Last year was obviously a strange year for that, but overall, I mean, we're both working pretty frequently, and I'm actually in the middle of a tour with St. Vincent right now, so I'm sitting in a hotel waiting for the second half to start. But as a creative musician, nothing is certain, so we always have to find other ways to make sure our finances are in order and stuff like that in order to keep making music.
So we're going to get into the album. It's The Garden, and it's Rachel Eckroth. And I want to make sure that people realize that this is a multi-play. This is a dense album, and it is a treat on headsets. So if you're doing Spotify or however you're listening to it, make sure you get the earbuds on. And I found that this album is a great Windows Up Drive album. It really works. I don't know if you put that into your thing, but it just makes life a little better. So these are my tips for our listeners to listen to this album. First song I want to talk about is Dracaena. It's a dragon plant. It's a leafy type of leafy plant. I found that it's good for indoors. It removes a lot of toxins. It's really good to have in your
It's good for the air.
Yeah, it's great for the air, but it's bad for cats and dogs. If they eat it, they'll have diarrhea, but they won't die. So I'm sure that was a part of the reason that you made this song.
I'm always thinking about the animals.
Well, this is where you got me. It's right at the beginning where you start off with the drum treatment on it. I was like, okay, this is not your normal, like, regular jazz album. Your sax solo just continues, and it kind of crescendos with a electronica outro that kind of runs for about 2-3 minutes. These are my notes on it. It's funky and it's fun. It sets the tone for what this album's going to be like.
There's a few things for that. So I had Donnie McCaslin in mind when I was writing that song. So he's the tenor player on that song, and there was definitely going to be a lot of treatment to it. Like, these things were thought about ahead of time. At the beginning, the bass groove, I actually wrote out a little bit of a different one. And then, of course, Tim put his spin on what I wrote. So his sense of groove and his ideas are so specific to him, and he's playing electric bass, so that sound is very Tim. So he set up that groove right away, and it's so fire, and I love that he did that, because you're right, it does set the tone for the whole album. And then at the end, we had a plan to just have like a completely free jazz track where we were just doing whatever. So we actually molded those two parts together. And originally, so since it was COVID, Donnie is actually overdubbed on the whole record. But Christian and I in the studio. So Tim, Christian, Human, and I went to Texas to record the trio part of this. So Christian and I just played free together at the end of that song. And then Jason Kingsland, who's the engineer after the fact, he's the mixing engineer and everything, he put all the tweakiness on it. So he did all the effects with different plugins and pedals and stuff.
The second song is Dried Up Roots, was your only vocal. And my notes here is that this is washed in synth. When I listen to the lyrics, Dried Up Root, it's really from the viewpoint of the root, right?
Sure. Pretty much, yeah.
So
I'm just curious on your take, because everybody has a different understanding of the lyrics.
Well, I mean, Dried Up Root could be a broken relationship. It could be, where you're stressed on the earth and you're trying to connect with the world. But in my case, I was looking at it as, oh, she's actually doing like the root itself trying to survive. And that's what I got out of it. But you tell me now.
Okay. I love everybody's take on it, because it's all kind of true. There's like a truth in everybody's take on what the lyrics are about. But it's literally it's so literal in a way. It's literally about my music career, and how I started in jazz, and then I veered into songwriting and singing, and sort of pulled away from. So, I went to college, I got all these degrees in jazz, and studied and was writing and was doing it. And then I just sort of bolted. Like, I left in New York, I went back to Arizona, I started songwriting, and still kind of doing jazz, but not a ton, and then I guess, it's sort of corny, but, I guess I managed to make it so that it doesn't sound that way. But, and then I'm back in it now. I'm doing it again. I'm coming back. So if you look into my discography, the last few albums, I'm just singing. I mean, I'm playing, but I'm singing everything too. And so that's why there's only one vocal on this record, is because this is meant to be compositions and keyboards and piano and improvisation. And so the song is literally about my roots dried up, meaning everything I worked on at the beginning, I just let it go, and started a new side career, or started a new life in a way, musical life. And now I'm trying to come back and be in it again.
I was wrong to assume things would grow according to the plans they sent, the hole they dug, they left me there, they pulled the rug from under me, my roots came loose, I lost my way, I couldn't choose, drink the water while the darkness blooms, my roots dried up, I couldn't choose, I wouldn't choose, my roots dried up and I began to lose my way.
So we're going to go into what I call the single of the album. I guess it was released to Spotify as the song to key in on, which is Oil, which you're going to tell me why that has anything to do with the garden, but that I'll let you go on that one. My notes is that this is a great, a rock jazz fusion, and the keys are awesome, and the bass is crazy on the song.
Okay, so you want me to tell you about Oil?
Well, you know what? It almost feels like you want to keep this stuff a secret. but
No, it's
okay.
no.
Yeah, tell
I'm
me
just
about Oil.
Okay. So Oil was I actually wrote that a couple of years before the album. So it was already in existence. So it doesn't necessarily fit in the garden, but it's still, something that could come from a garden. So the song existed. I recorded it with like a little trio that I called Antilog that didn't last too long, but it was a very synthy electronic version of that song. And then we decided to put it on the album and put Donnie on there too. So we tweaked the song a little bit, Tim and I, and that's really the story behind it. It's no big mystery.
Rachel, thank you very much. The album's called The Garden, and thank you for talking to me today on Something Came from Baltimore.
Thanks so much, Thomas.
Yeah, it was fun. The album is called The Garden. The artist is Rachel Eckroth. I am your host, Tom Gallagher. Please subscribe to the podcast. We're everywhere that podcasts may be. Flip to 5 people who love music just as much as you do, because we want you all to be a part of that Be More Music scene.